Hello and welcome to Jolineknitsalot. This is my show about knitting and crafting and the things I get up to here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. How have you been? July flew by, didn't it? It's been a while since I had a real chitty chatty show and I have a lot of things to catch you up on, but I hope you're doing well. Somehow it's August. I don't know how that happened. My kids are going back to school in September, so we're sort of in that okay, it's time to figure out what you need for school and figure out how you're getting to school and all of those things. So August will be a busy month too. Okay, I have lots to catch you up on. In July, my family and I went on a trip. We went to Italy and Croatia. My husband's family is from Croatia, so it was a good opportunity for the kids to see where their grandparents are from, where they grew up. We went to Rome, Florence, Venice, and then we took a ferry across to Croatia, and we went to two cities there called Rovinj and Split. We had a great time. Some of the highlights, I think, for us were just surviving the heat, because it was very hot there. It was 39 degrees Celsius and quite humid in Rome. We loved the shopping. We loved trying new foods. We ate a lot of pasta when we were in Rome, especially. We had gelato every day, but it was really nice for us to just sort of take the girls on a trip where we were seeing a lot of things and a lot of things they haven't seen before. They have been to Europe, but it's been quite some time, and they've never been to Italy, and specifically never been to Croatia. So it was really great for them to see parts of the world where their parents grew up. Hopefully I'm showing you some pictures now of the things we saw and the places we did, but it was an amazing trip. And this trip was not at all centered around yarn. So I visited only one yarn shop, only because it was close to our hotel and my kids were dealing with jet lag, so it was really difficult to get them out of bed. I think particularly Italy and probably Croatia too, to some extent, it's not really so much a knitting culture in the way that I like knitting. I like, when I think of knitting, I really like cozy sweaters and mostly sweaters. I love sweaters and knitted socks, and those are just not things you need if you're living in Italy most of the year. So the yarn store we went to was very commercial. I didn't take any pictures on the inside, but it was full of commercial yarns. It was stacked from floor to ceiling with all sorts of different yarns. But I didn't take any pictures. I didn't really feel comfortable. I didn't know enough Italian to ask to feel comfortable to take some pictures, and it just didn't seem like, I don't know, I just didn't feel comfortable doing it. So we did go to one yarn store, but this trip was not about knitting. It was about spending time with my family and seeing parts of the world that we haven't seen before and experiencing different cultures. So while we were away, I did bring some knitting, and I brought 3 skeins of yarn to knit 3 pairs of socks. And I thought, well, that's very optimistic. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get through to the 3rd pair, but you never know. It's best to have extra yarn, right? As knitters, we always pack more yarn than we need. And actually, on the plane ride home from Rome to Calgary, I did cast on the 3rd pair of socks. So why don't I share, oh, you know what? I'll share those with you in just a minute. There's a couple other things that happened, sort of knitting related in the last couple of weeks. Just after we got home and when I was still dealing with jet lag, it was really hard for me this time. Man, I kept falling asleep around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then I'd be awake at 4 in the morning. So it's not ideal. But on the Sunday after we got back here in Edmonton, there was a crafty movie event. This is the first time there's been an event like this that I know of in Edmonton. It was held at one of the sort of arts movie houses down by our university. It used to be called the Garneau. I think it's still referred to as the Garneau Movie Theater. Anyway, I haven't been there in years. I used to go there when I was in university to see movies like the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Monty Python and that sort of thing. But this was an event especially for crafters. It was set up by a couple of embroiderers actually in the local area, but everybody was welcome. And so they were showing Josie and the Pussycats, which I'm not sure why that movie was chosen. It seems a bit random. But it was, I mean, I didn't go for the movie. I went for the fun. A friend and I went, and they had movie theater popcorn, which I love. There were some vendors in the foyer before and after the show who were selling a lot of like embroidery kits, cross-stitch kits. My friends from the Fiber Nook were there selling some assorted crafty sort of either kits. They had lots of cross-stitch and embroidery kits, but other supplies too if you needed them. And then there was a couple of other vendors too. I did pick up a kit, and I'm going to show you that a little later. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. They kept the lights sort of semi-dimmed, so before the movie started and they're showing all these like trailers for movies that are coming up or ads or whatever, they kept it at that level of lighting so that while the movie was happening, there was still some light. I worked on a very simple stockinette project, which I'll show you in a little bit, but there were people doing other things. There was lots of crocheters, there was knitters. I think some people, particularly knitting, I would say, perhaps crochet too. We get kind of good at knitting in the dark so that we can take knitting like a stockinette sock to a movie. I've done that for years. So I can knit in the dark. It was nice having a little bit of light and not being the only person crafting. But there was other people around us doing other things. There was a gentleman just sort of in front of me, and he had an iPad and he was drawing with the Apple Pencil. He was just like doodling so that was really cool. It was nice to see something sort of a different craft. Lots of people were doing embroidery. I don't know how you did it. It wasn't pitch black, but it was not light enough for these old eyes to be able to do embroidery in a movie theater. So my hat's off to you. That was impressive. There were some other people there that I knew, and they were doing some crocheting or whatever. And I think like afterwards we talked about it. It was a really fun event. I'm not sure the movie was what I would have chosen, but that's fine. It was fun to just get out and socialize and to see other vendors. And so it was a lot of fun. I really hope they do it again. I haven't been to that old movie theater in a long time, and it's bigger than I remember. It's got a bit of a balcony. It was a great choice of place, and I wouldn't mind if they played, movies from the 50s, 60s, whatever, 80s, fun retro movies to sit and craft to, enjoy some movie theater popcorn and some other crafters. And yeah, that was really fun. So I hope they do that again. The other thing that I had in the last couple of weeks that was crafty related was just a knit night. I haven't been able to go to my local knit night. I have been attending the Yarn Rebels knit night here in Edmonton. The Yarn Rebels is a group. They've got a website if you want to check them out. The idea behind the Yarn Rebels is just to like invite other people to come and join them to knit, and to be unapologetically yourself, which I really appreciate it. They're very welcoming to new people who come. There's a wide assortment of people who come to knit night. This last knit night, everybody was showing their new tattoos. There was 3 new tattoos that I hadn't seen, so that was exciting. And we just show up at a local restaurant or pub and we knit. So that was fun. And a bonus this time was that the waitress who was helping us out happened to be my friend's niece, and I hadn't seen her in a while, so that was really fun. So that's all the knitty sort of events that I have been to. This last week, there's been a collection of knitted patterns that have come out recently, sponsored by The Farmer's Daughter, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to do a sample knit for this pattern collection. I knit a cowl. It was a colorwork cowl called the Hozo cowl. I'll insert some pictures here. And when the sort of pattern pictures started coming out for this collection, I realized that they used the knit that I made in the pattern pictures. So that was sort of a really nice compliment, I think, for me. It was nice to see something that I had knitted being used in the pictures, being worn by Candace, who was the owner of the Farmer's Daughter fibers. And just to see that sort of like something that I made being used and appreciated, I think, was really nice, actually. So that was sort of a special thing that happened in the last couple of weeks. I did do a little video talking about my sample knitting progress. experience, I would say. I'll link to that in the show notes below. It's a pretty short video, and I just kind of talk about what happened. I got the pattern, they sent me yarn, they gave me very clear instructions. I had some back and forth with the designer a little bit, just to clarify a couple things. She was really delightful to work with. I really enjoyed the pattern, and it was a great experience overall. Now, I have knit samples in the past, and my experience with sample knitting has been that if, let's say, a yarn shop or a dyer reaches out to you and asks you to sample knit, they provide you with the yarn, probably a pattern, or tell you what they would like you to knit. You knit it, you give it back to them. In this case, I also, sometimes you supply the leftover yarn as well. In this case, I did for the cowl. I sent back the yarn and the cowl, the finished cowl. Sometimes they just tell you to keep the extra yarn. That's totally dependent on your experience. And then they will give you some way of sort of paying you back for your time. So I have received in the past, for the 2 sample knits that I have done, I received a gift card to a yarn store. So that was really great for me. I got a gift card to the Farmer Sweater Fiber, and I do really like their yarns. So that was a great sort of experience. And you can see pictures of the Hoso cowl with my knitted version of it on Ravelry. And I will link I'll link that to the show notes below as well. So it turns out for me, July was the month of Summerly socks. Socks turned out to be a really great project for me. They were small and manageable, and I could take them with me on my travels, as well as to soccer games and tournaments before I left. So you're going to see a lot of socks, and these are all socks from, I'll have to check. Yep, they're all socks from the Sock Project by Summerly. I'm going to stick a picture here of my dog enjoying Summerly's book as well. Turns out this book is not just for knitters. The first pair of socks I have off my needles are the Camellia socks. This is a lacy sock pattern, and I knitted in some Numana yarns. Numana is a local to me dyer. She is in Sherwood Park now, or soon to be moving to Sherwood Park. She had been dyeing out of a studio here in Edmonton, but she's moving to a bigger and better space soon. So this is just a lacy pattern. It's got one lacy panel, and the one thing I did adjust for this sock was where that lacy panel appears. In the original pattern, this lace motif goes straight down the center of the sock, and I moved mine to the edge. So I moved it to the left edge on this sock and the right edge on this sock, so that when I'm wearing them, the lacy panels will run down the side of my feet. And that's the only change I did. If you like lace patterns, this is it's a pretty easy pattern to follow. And I think in this lightly speckled yarn, it's quite pretty. So that's the first set of socks off my needles. I also seem to have knit only pink socks by Summerly, so that's sort of interesting. I think I just was grabbing yarns that I wanted to travel with, and they all seem to be pink. The next pair of socks I did was, I think these are also from the lacy section, and they're called the Quinata socks. These socks also have a very simple lace pattern that runs down the side of the foot. In this case, it runs down sort of the back portion of the sock until you get to the heel, and then also down the side of the foot all the way. And then it also appears on this side. This is a much simpler lace pattern than the Camellia socks. As you can see, I think it's a 4-row repeat. That makes it a little bit easier. And each one is the same. So you do it 4 times around until you get to the heel, and then you do it twice around. The yarn I used here is some Polka Dot Creek yarn. Polka Dot Creek is a dyer out of Airdrie, Alberta. They're going to be at Knit City, Calgary in a week, and so will I. Yeah, and another lightly speckled pink sock with a bit of lacy funness. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing with all of these socks. It did occur to me that at the end of this year, with all the socks I've been knitting, I'm going to have to find some friends to give socks away to, because my sock basket is very full. The next pair of socks I knit was just a little pair of shorties. These ones I knit while driving through Croatia, and I think on a plane. These are just very shorty socks, and these are from the cabled section. Oh my goodness, this is very hard to show you. These are the honeycomb and moss socks, and I knit them in some Knit Pick Stroll. This color is called Pucker. It's a very neon-y pink, as you can see. Let me see if I can get that color to show the pattern. So in each side of the sock is this lovely little honeycombed cable. And then in between is this moss stitch. Moss stitch is simply knits and purls alternating. So the first row you would knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. And then the second row you would purl one, knit one, purl one, knit one. So you get this like sort of bumpy texture, and that's supposed to be moss. I knit 2 of these shorty little socks, and they are quite cute. I love Knit Pick Stroll. I think it's a great yarn, and it comes in so many colors that it makes it really great for color work and for fun socks. So that's the third pair off my needles. And then when I was on the plane home, I did cast on the cuff for one of these socks. This is the Soma sock, and these socks are from the knits and purls section of Summerlee's book. I really like that she has so many different sort of textural options for sock knitting. Cables, as you just saw, lacy ones, colorwork ones. And then this is from, again, just simple knits and purls. I used some Knit Picks Stroll tweed for these ones, and let me tell you, there was some yarn chicken happening. I'll show you how much yarn I had at the very end. But these Soma socks have a really pretty, it almost looks like a cable pattern, doesn't it? But this is done by slipping a stitch, knitting a couple, and then slipping that, passing that slip stitch over. And that gives you this sort of almost honeycomby kind of appearance. And then there's a little bit of texture on the foot. These socks, very sweet. I just finished them the other day. And let me just show you how much yarn I had left over. This much. Yes, I was getting nervous. When I weighed these socks, they weighed 49 grams, and the ball is supposed to have 50 grams in it. So if you're knitting the Soma socks, make sure you have a little extra yarn on hand, because it turns out that you probably will need more than 50 grams. I tend to knit the 64 stitch size. That's the one that fits me best. And my socks tend to be, well, I knit top-down socks to 7 inches before I start the toe. So if your feet are about that size, just know you'll probably need more than 1 ball of yarn for these. The honeycomb and moss socks, I also used a 50-gram skein of yarn, but I had about 10 grams left over. So much more for sure than these Soma socks. The last 3 pairs of socks that I knit were all knit on vacation, and because I was traveling, I was a little bit cautious, and I took only wooden needles. So these are the needles that I used. I believe they are Knit Pro wooden needles. It actually doesn't say on here. I think they were Knit Pro. These are 2.25 millimeter needles, and wooden needles are not my go-to when it comes to sock knitting. So these were fine. One thing that's nice about them is your stitches don't tend to slip off of them. The wood tends to have a little bit more grip than, let's say, a stainless steel needle, but the tips are not very sharp. So when I was working, particularly the cable pattern, because I tend to cable without a needle, these were not ideal. I made it work. because I didn't want to have knitting needles taken away from me in security or have to deal with any issues with needles that wouldn't be allowed on planes. So I took these wooden knitting needles, and I also took a set of bamboo 2.25 millimeter DPNs. They were sort of tucked in my knapsack with my pens and stuff, just in case. I thought, well, if I need, if they take these away, I'll have some backups. They probably would have taken them all away, but regardless, I used wooden needles for the last few sets of socks, and while they worked fine and there was a purpose for my taking them, I think I'm going to be switching back to my lovely stainless steel DPNs. I just like them a lot better. I do have some future sock plans. I'll show you some yarn I have wound up and some yarn that I've purchased. But if you are a fan of Summerlee, then maybe you know that she's come out with a new sock club. Honestly, I'm just gonna keep knitting Summerlee socks until my house is full of socks and I have nothing else to wear. Summerlee's latest, which was actually sent to me on Instagram by a viewer, thank you, lowercase Kate. I mean, I would have found it sooner than later, but I do appreciate your attention, or drawing my attention to this pattern as soon as possible. It's a colorwork cuff club. Summerlee is amazing. She's come up with this idea of sending out like a subscription service, colorwork cuff pattern at the beginning of every month for the next year. It started now in August. It's a $12 US for an entire year of sock patterns. It's the same basic sock pattern. In August, she sends you the basic sock, and then you can plug in the colorwork chart that she's going to send you at the beginning of every month. How fabulous. I think this is a great idea. And I, of course, will be knitting the colorwork socks. I have some yarn for the first pair for when I find time to cast on even more socks. Anyway, I'm super excited about this idea. I love the idea of every month getting a new pattern, but it's not a whole pattern that I have to relearn every month because it's the same basic sock pattern. So I'm just going to be knitting a sock that I already know with new and fun colorwork charts. And then once the colorwork cuff is done, you just go back to knitting a plain old sock, which is also very comforting and fun. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to check out the colorwork cuff pattern by Summerlee. It's on Ravelry. I will link it in the show notes below, and I encourage you to check it out. I have all sorts of little, leftover bits of yarn from other socks that I have knit this year, and I was thinking of doing some stranded color work, but now that this pattern is coming out, I think I'll be just saving all my little odds and ends and doing color work. Actually, isn't that a fun combination? Using them for color work cuffs. So if you, like me, have little odds and ends more than 1 gram, I encourage you to join me and we'll knit some color work socks together this year. There was a suggestion that we do a knit along. And while I'm not opposed to doing a knit along, I have to wrap up my summer of Summerlee socks, which all of these socks will be entered into. And if you are knitting some Summerlee socks this summer, doesn't matter what pattern, it could be her very basic socks, could be some stripy socks, could be some cable-y socks. Whatever you're knitting, if they're a Summerlee design, please link it in Instagram if you're joining us. We're using the hashtag Summer of Summerlee Socks, and share with us what you're knitting. If you're knitting a whole handful of pink socks, then let me know. There will be some prizes. I'm going to draw them at the end of September. I don't know what those prizes are yet. I'm planning to do a little shopping at Knit City Calgary and come up with some lovely prizes to share with those of you who are knitting along with me. It could be that for the colorwork cuff club, we just share the sort of projects we're working on and maybe have a hashtag where we can, again, share our projects and share with other knitters what we're knitting and our color ideas and that sort of thing. So that might be fun. But let me know in the show notes below if you'd be interested in that just sort of a fun color work knit along where we share ideas. Let me know if you're interested. So after so many socks, I did feel the need to cast on something a little bit more wearable. Not that socks aren't wearable, but one cannot live on socks alone. So when the Midsummer Tee pattern by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks came out, I was all over it. I just thought, wow, what a great idea. It's a super easy, heavy knit tee pattern, and this pattern has so many options with it. It's got no sleeves, you can knit short sleeves, you can knit long sleeves, and you can knit now a v-neck sweater. So I ordered myself some yarn. This happens to be some of my favorite sport weight yarn. It's called Durarum Natura Ulisse. I've used it before and I really liked it. And this time I am holding it double to create a Aran weight, or really heavy weight. Here, let me check my gauge for you. It's a woolen spun yarn, so it is quite lofty. So it's a very lightweight knit, but I am getting, without blocking it, I am getting 3 stitches per inch. So it's a hefty gauge, but also this project is going so quickly. I cast it on the week before I left because I needed something to keep my hands busy. And let me show you my progress. Ta-da! This is the granite colorway. This pattern is knit from the bottom up, which the only thing I don't love about bottom up sweaters is that it makes it harder to adjust the body length to get a length that you like. This pattern is knit with a 9-inch body, and that's not my comfort zone. I like slightly longer. So when I was casting on, I added, I think 4 inches to the body. So now it's 13 inches from the cuff, the bottom cuff, which is just a nice little rib. Lots of beautiful stockinette. And then you divide and knit the back first, which this is what I was knitting at Josie and the Pussycats. So just very plain. And then the front scoop, which I finished last night, also so quick. And then I did one of the arms. I'm looking forward to wearing this, not as a t-shirt, although I guess I could. Let me just put it on for you now. I think that it would be a lot more fun to wear as sort of a layering piece, maybe over oh, see, now having said that, this is kind of fun as a t-shirt. I think this would be a great layering piece through the fall and winter. Let me just stand up and show you what it looks like. I do like this length on me. I think it's fun. And I like the way that this cap sleeve hits me up here. The short sleeve version would probably hit me closer to here. And that just, for me, it's an awkward length for me. If that suits you, then great. The long sleeve version also looks super cute. And she did some various versions where she marls in some colors and holds 2 together. I'm actually really liking this without something underneath it. And I think maybe it could be that once it's washed and softens up a little bit, it could be something that I could wear with maybe a little camisole underneath. Let's focus on this sleeve because it's actually finished, but I really like the way it fits. When I'm not wearing my Midsummer tee, I am wearing this June tank top. This is a top I finished, I'm not even sure when, but I knitted in some Kelburn Mojave, which is a linen cotton blend, and it's a lovely little tank top. The pattern is by Petite Knits, and I will link to that in the show notes below. So this top is nearly done. I have to do one more set of ribbing at this armhole, and then just a little bit of neck ribbing, and that's it. It was so fast. So if you're looking for a satisfying fall knit, I can definitely recommend this pattern. I think that once it's all washed and evened out, I think it's going to be a great piece. I did want to share with you though that while I was knitting this, there was a few things that I needed to look up. So even on the simplest knits, there are ways to improve your knitting to even things out or to smooth some rough spots. So I don't know about you, but when you're casting off a bunch of stitches, let's say in the middle of the front of a piece like this, often what happens is you knit a bunch of stitches and then you get to here and then you start casting off. And when you do that cast off, the first stitch tends to pull away from the other stitches and you get quite a gap. But I remembered that I have this book, Patty Lyon's Knitting Bag of Tricks, and this book has got tips on all sorts of strange little knitting problems that you probably didn't even know you had. But I remembered that there was a section, let me see if I can find it now, about evening out that cast on. And I'll show you what I meant if I can actually find it. So this is what I was trying to describe to you. When you start binding off, sometimes that first stitch gets pulled over and then you get this gap here. And I remembered seeing this here and I thought, well, if there's a way to make that gap a little bit better, I'm going to try it. And so Patty does have some suggestions on how to improve that, to turn this into this. And while mine might not be quite as good as Patty's, I do think that I did a pretty good job of evening out that little pulling section right there. So all that to say that if you're interested in some knitting tips and tricks that can improve your knitting, I would recommend this book. I read it through when I got it. It's delightful. It's funny, just like Patty. It's very easy to read. And there's lots of little tips and tricks on how to do things like smooth out cast-ons or bind-offs, softening up edges, like tightening up your cast-ons or bind-offs, just little tips and tricks to improve your knitting. And so if you're interested in that, I would suggest this book. Like I said, I read it when I got it and then I put it on the shelf, and then every once in a while I'll be doing something like maybe knitting a buttonhole, and I will think to myself, I'm pretty sure Patty Lyons had a good buttonhole in her book, so I'll pull it out and I'll try her techniques. In this case, I remembered that she had a way to smooth that out, and so I put my knitting aside until I could get home and check out my book and use her tips on improving my knitting. So this is not something that you need as a knitter. But if you are in a place where you'd like to improve some of your skills or neaten up some certain parts of your knitting, I would recommend this book. And if you don't want to buy a book, then I would recommend you follow Patty Lyons on Instagram, because she's always posting little videos on how to improve your knitting. And they're just little like 1 or 2 minute videos that I think you might find helpful or at least interesting. The last project I have on my needles is a sweater, another sweater. When we were on holiday, my younger daughter was looking at some sweaters as we were shopping in Europe, and there was one that was like a boat neck, plain, and she said to me, "You could knit that." And I said, "Yeah, I could. Do you want me to knit you one like that?" And she said, "Sure." So when we got back, I asked her if she was serious, and she said yes. So I took her to a local yarn store. We went to Statement Junkie, which is a yarn store in Sherwood Park, took us maybe half an hour to drive there, so it's not so far. It's in the Edmonton area. And what I like about Statement Junkie is they carry a lot of really lovely commercially dyed yarns. They have hand-dyed yarns too, but they have a really good selection of like workhorse yarns that are really lovely. And so the sweater that I'm going to be knitting for my daughter is the Sevilla blouse. It is a pattern by who else? Petite Knits. It looks like this. It's a very plain pattern. And so I took her to the store and I showed her some of the yarns that would be the right gauge or close enough gauge. And she started picking colors that she liked. So we were walking around the store and she would pick up a skein of this and a skein of that. And so finally we had 3. And between the 3, she decided on this one. It is a Knitting for Olive heavy merino, I believe, yarn. So it is quite a nice, soft yarn. In the cake, it is a little bit like, not crunchy, but it's like, it's got a bit of a like, can you hear that? It's a little bit, it's got a little bit of body to it. There was a washed sample in the store, and I think that once I give it a nice blocking, it'll soften up and be super lovely and drapey. And I really only knit a very little bit of the back. I'm making an oversized sort of boat neck version of this sweater for my daughter, and so this is the back of it. And I'll knit a bit more and then I'll cast on the front. So this is just the very beginning of a sweater. But it is fun to be using a yarn that I've never used before. And I have been wanting to try this yarn, so this was a great excuse for me too. She picked this beautiful deep sort of gray-y blue color, and I'll let you know how this sweater comes along. I have some plans to knit some fall sweaters, and I feel like lately I've been very much in a place where I want to knit sort of more classic shapes, like this very plain Midsummer tee, which will be a nice lane piece, and then the Sevilla blouse, which again is mostly stockinette. I haven't really found a sweater that has really got me super inspired for fall yet. I'm sort of waiting to see if there's a new pattern that comes out that gets me super excited. I do have some ideas of patterns that I would like to knit though, and I thought I'd share them with you now. The first one is the Harvey Wallbanger. The Harvey Wallbanger sweater came out last year. It's a lovely kind of feather and fan, retro-y almost kind of sweater. And I bought this pattern when it came out because I just loved it. So this has been on my radar for quite some time. I think it'd be a great layering sort of fall sweater with some jeans, and really cute. So this sweater is definitely on my list of sweaters to knit this fall. The next one is the Jethro cardigan. Again, I think a lot of people are very excited about combining crochet and knitting, and this is a really cute way to do that. I find cardigans super wearable, particularly in the fall and winter months. I have lots of cute t-shirts, and then it's fun to layer a cardigan over top. And so I think this one would be a great addition, and I will be shopping for yarn for this at Knit City. I'm not sure what my color palette is going to be. I think I'm trying to keep an open mind on that. And the next sweater that I'd like to knit is the Sea Glass cardigan. This cardigan came out not too long ago, and I've been watching this Sea Glass collection grow. I love the idea of using up scraps, and this is a lot of 1x1 colorwork knitting, so this sweater will be a commitment, and so I'm thinking I might save it for a little bit later in the fall. But I do have yarn picked out for this. When I purchased some of the Joline yarn from my Midsummer tee, I also picked up a creamy off-white color to make this Sea Glass cardigan. I'll be combining it with a bunch of sport weight leftovers that I have from various projects that I've made, and I've got a whole bag of yarn set aside. I'll be using the white as the main color and then alternating white with a different color throughout the body of the Sea Glass cardigan. It will be a bit of a slog, so I have to be in the right frame of mind to start that Sea Glass cardigan, but having a look at some of the yarn colors that I have has got me excited to do that. The pattern itself is written for DK, and I'm going to be using sport weight yarn, so I will probably do a bit of a swatch and figure out what size I need to knit. Most likely I'll go up one pattern size and use needles appropriate for my sport weight yarn. Because the whole thing is going to be knit one, like color work, knit one, it will probably not have the same give as regular stockinette, and so probably it's better for this sweater to be a little bit oversized than to be too close to my body, to my own body measurements. I think that without that give, it's better for it to have some more positive ease. And so I'm probably going to be looking for a size that is about 4 inches of positive ease to give me that comfortable room without being too sloppy or oversized. And the last pattern that I'm sort of thinking about knitting for this fall is the sunset sweatshirt. This is a pattern that just came out in that driftwood pattern collection just recently from Farmer's Daughter. And it is a really cute, oversized, sweatshirty kind of sweater. And I think that that would be something I would wear all the time. This is a pattern by Jessie Made Designs, and it's got a really wide size options. So Jessie Made is very size inclusive and offers sizes from usually about 28, 30 inches to over 60 inches. So this is a very size inclusive pattern. Really, Jessie's very good at designing a sweater that will look good on almost every body. And with the option to make it longer or shorter or to adjust the fit as you like. So I think that those are some of the sweaters that I'm thinking about knitting for this fall. Do you have some fall knitting plans? Or any of them sweaters that I might like to knit? Let me know in the show notes below. So now that I've told you all about my grand plans to knit some sweaters this fall, why don't I show you some more immediate plans? The monthly sock knitting continues apace. This is August sock yarn. Isn't it pretty? It is sort of got that like end of summer golden feel to it. This is some more Knit Spin Farms. It is the Targhee Sport Base, which means I won't have to cast on as many stitches. And it's called I'd Eat That by the Goats. So Knit Spin Farm, at the farm, they have goats, and goats eat everything, or that is my understanding. So this color, it says it has small nibbles of wild rose, light and dark pink, mulberry, barbecue potato chips, honeysuckle, thistle, and black raspberry. I think these are going to be some really fun socks. I'll use this contrasting purple for probably the cuffs, the heels, and the toes. And I think I'm going to use the Fairground socks by the Bakery Bears, KF Jones. This is a pattern that I really like. It's sort of a feather and fan, again, sock yarn. And the thing I like about a lot of well-written sock patterns is that they'll come in many different sizes. So for example, if a sock pattern is written in for fingering weight yarn and I knit the 64 stitch pattern, that's usually a medium, and then there's often sizes on either side to fit different size feet. So for me, if I use the 56 stitch version of that pattern, I can use my sport weight yarn and appropriately sized needles and get the same sort of pattern or design with a heavier weight yarn. So that's what I'll be doing, I think, with my August sock yarn. So that's my August monthly socks from the old yearly knit along that I've got going for myself. And then while I was at Statement Junkie, I picked up some yarn for Summer Lee's August Colorwork socks. There are two patterns. One has got like sort of a granny stripe effect around the cuff, and that uses several different colors. So those colors that I showed you earlier from my magical little drawer, these ones here, I think that these might make a nice fun granny stripe. So I've been inspired to do that. But the other pattern is just sort of a large floral motif with a flower at the top and then a stem and leaves coming out. And I thought that this would be great. This is some Lang Yarns Gel Wool Super Wash. It's a pretty reasonably priced yarn. It comes with a little, in the center, there's a little nubbin of reinforcing yarn. So on the label it says that you get included 5 grams of reinforcement yarn, which you can use in whatever area of the sock tends to wear out for you. As we've discussed earlier, I tend to wear my socks out in the ball of the feet. So if I remember, I could try and incorporate that yarn into that sort of section of the sock that happens right before maybe 2 inches right before the toe. I'm gonna have to try and remember to give that a try. But I think what I'm gonna use is this beautiful sort of tealy green for the background, and then this for the flowers. The other reason I really like this color is that it's a great contrast color that I can use with all sorts of other yarns. I haven't really used this yarn before, so I'm looking forward to giving it a try. It's 75% virgin wool and 25% nylon. It's got 210 meters and 50 grams. So this should be fine for a pair of socks for myself. I have been finding that I tend to use about 50 grams of yarn for my socks. And these socks, these colorwork socks, tend to have a relatively short cuff, about 3 inches. And so with that size, I should be just fine. But I know where to get some more if I need it. And I think that this color combination is pretty great. And the other thing that I have that I thought I'd share with you is a little embroidery kit. I know my track record with embroidery is not great, but I'm cautiously optimistic that I can get this one to work. It is a little kit put together by a local embroidery artist who goes by Naked and Frayed. This is her little, oh, I'm sorry, it's so shiny. Naked and Frayed. Oh, maybe you can see it there. I follow her on Instagram. She does amazing stuff. So you can commission her to do an embroidered picture of your house. She will do an embroidered picture of your pets. She does beautiful pet portraits. But also she's done some really cute pictures of local Edmonton landmarks, and one of them is this view of downtown Edmonton. So there are all the buildings of downtown. This bridge here is a relatively new bridge in Edmonton. It took a while for them to finish it, but it's the new Walterdale Bridge. And then we've got this beautiful North Saskatchewan River running through, and this snippet of our river valley, which is a really amazing space in the city of Edmonton. Our river valley is a huge swath of parkland, essentially, that hugs the river. And it also sort of branches out through different communities into little creek ravines and that sort of thing. So Edmonton has got this beautiful green ribbon of forested parkland that has remained relatively untouched. And we're pretty lucky to have that. There's lots of paths through the river valley. People run, bike, rollerblade, cross-country ski in the winter. There's skating paths also in the winter. So it's a really special place in Edmonton, and it's nice to have that sort of incorporated, but it means a whole lot of French knots. So I'll let you know when I get this started. It comes as a really lovely kit. All of the floss that you need, a needle, as you can see here, and then a pre-printed fabric in the hoop all ready for me. So when I'm ready for my next embroidery project, this will be it. And I think it'll be nice to sort of combine some of the other landscape embroideries that I'll have and try and maybe come up with a little sort of collage for some place in my house. So right now, that collection is limited to an embroidery of Lake Louise, which was worked on by myself, my younger daughter, but mostly my aunt-in-law. Thank you very much, Maria, for finishing that for us. But then if I combine that with this sort of local Edmonton picture, and maybe I can start combining some sort of local scenes into a little collage that I can have in my house. At least that's the plan. It really depends on how well this embroidery goes, but I'll let you know. And that, holy cow, is all of the things that I have been working on, purchasing, thinking about in the last few weeks. I hope that you've had a really wonderful summer so far, and I hope that in the next couple of weeks you get to do some of the things you like to do. I'm going to be at Knit City in Calgary next weekend, which is August 17th. I will be there only on the Saturday. My friend and I are driving down. It's going to be a very long day, but we're going to have a lot of fun. But if you see me there, just come and say hi. And if you like or are interested in having a little meetup, we can arrange for that too. Just let me know in the show notes below if you're going to be at Knit City and if you'd like to have a little meet. I would love that. Maybe we could sit around and knit and talk about some of the things we've bought at Knit City. But I'll tell you all about that when I get back, if I don't see you there. So take care of yourselves, have a lot of fun, do all the things you like to do in the next couple of weeks. I know I'll be knitting a lot. I'll see you soon.